I pulled into my driveway to find nothing but oil stains where my pride and joy belonged. My father laughed when I called, saying my car was now my unlicensed brother's property. He thought family loyalty would silence me, so I called the police instead. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The silence of the house was usually something I craved. After a 10-hour shift managing the user experience for a high-traffic e-commerce platform, my brain usually felt like it had been run through a blender. I lived for that moment of disconnect, the heavy thud of my front door closing, the click of the lock, and the solitude of my own space. But today, the silence wasn't inside the house. It was outside. It was a screaming, gaping void in the driveway that hit me harder than a physical blow. I had blinked 3 times, standing on the edge of the curb, my keys dangling uselessly in my hand. My brain simply refused to process the visual data. I looked at the neighbor's lawn, then back at my own concrete pad. I looked at the street, thinking maybe, just maybe, I had parked it there in a fugue state this morning. But I hadn't. I was meticulous. I was organized. I was the woman who color-coded her calendar and had a 5-year financial plan taped to the inside of her pantry door. I didn't misplace things, and I certainly didn't misplace a pearl white limited edition SUV that I had made the final payment on exactly 14 days ago. The nausea hit me first, a cold, oily slick in the pit of my stomach. That car wasn't just metal and rubber. It was 5 years of brown bagging lunches. It was 5 years of skipping vacations, of driving a rusted sedan that rattled when it went over 40, of saving every single bonus and overtime check until I could walk into the dealership and sign the papers with a hand that didn't shake. It was my trophy. It was the physical manifestation of the fact that I, Alina, had made it on my own. And now, at 6:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, it was gone. My chest tightened, a panic attack clawing its way up my throat. I dropped my work bag right there on the grass, not caring about the damp earth. I fumble-dialed 911, my thumb hovering over the call button, but then I stopped. A thought, intrusive and strange, flickered in my mind. The spare key. I had an emergency key, a heavy electronic fob that cost $400 to replace. I kept it in a fireproof safe in my home office. But 6 months ago, during a particularly bad blizzard, I had given it to my father. Just in case, I had said. If I'm stuck somewhere, or if there's an emergency at the house. I lowered the phone. It couldn't be. The thought felt like a betrayal just to entertain it. My father was difficult, old-fashioned, and stubborn, but he wasn't a thief. He was a man who prided himself on family values and hard work. Still, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely unlock my front door. I rushed inside, the air of the house stale and undisturbed. I went straight to the kitchen counter where I usually tossed my mail. Nothing. No note. No frantic voicemail on the landline I kept just for my parents. I pulled out my cell phone again. My battery was at 12%, blinking red, mirroring the emergency unfolding in my chest. I sat down on the cold tile of the kitchen floor, my back against the dishwasher, and dialed my father's number. It rang and rang and rang. Usually, he picked up on the second ring. He was retired. His phone was practically glued to his hand as he scrolled through news feeds and fishing forums. Finally, on the last ring before voicemail, the line clicked open. Alina, his voice was loud, surrounded by background noise. It sounded like a television, maybe a game show. He sounded relaxed, happy even. Dad, I choked out, my voice cracking. Dad, something terrible has happened. I just got home, my car. It's gone. Someone stole my car from the driveway. I waited for the gasp. I waited for the outrage, for the protective instinct to kick in. I expected him to tell me to lock the doors, to call the police, that he was on his way with a baseball bat. Instead, there was a pause, a long, heavy pause. And then he chuckled. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It wasn't a laugh of disbelief. It was a casual, dismissive chuckle, the kind you give a child who has dropped their ice cream cone. "Oh, calm down, Ellie," he said, the sound of him chewing something audible over the line. "Nobody stole it, it's safe." The air left my lungs. "Safe? What do you mean safe? Where is it?" "It's at Lucas's place," he said, as if he were telling me he'd borrowed a cup of sugar. "I dropped it off about an hour ago." I stared at the grout lines on the floor, the world tilting on its axis. "You took my car to Lucas W. Hi, is his car broken?" "His car?" Dad scoffed. "Lucas doesn't have a car, you know that, and with the baby coming, he can't be taking the bus everywhere. It's undignified for a man with a family." "I don't understand," I whispered, the shock slowly hardening into something sharp and jagged. "When are you bringing it back?" "Bring it back," he laughed again, louder this time. "Elena, you're not listening. I gave it to him. He needs a reliable vehicle for my grandson. You're a single woman, living alone. You can take the train or get yourself a little compact thing. Lucas needs the space. We're a family and families help each other." The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of a terminal illness. It was a deliberate, calculated amputation of my life, performed with a smile by the man who was supposed to protect me. For a solid 10 seconds, the only sound in the kitchen was the hum of the refrigerator and the shallow, jagged rhythm of my own breathing. My brain was trying to reject his words like a bad organ transplant. Gave it to him, as if it were an old sweater or a leftover casserole. "You gave it to him," I repeated, my voice barely audible. I stood up, my legs feeling like they were made of water, and gripped the edge of the granite countertop, another thing I had paid for myself to steady myself. "Dad, that is a $60,000 vehicle. I just paid it off 2 weeks ago. You can't just give it away." "Don't talk about money like that, it's unbecoming," he snapped, his tone shifting instantly from dismissive to authoritative. "This is about priorities. Lucas has a baby on the way. His girlfriend, what's her name? Jessica, she needs to get to appointments. What do you need an SUV for? Driving your groceries home? It's selfish, Elena, hoarding a family resource like that." "A family resource?" I shouted, the volume of my voice startling me. "It's not a family resource. It's my property. My name is on the title. My bank account paid the loan. You didn't pay a dime for that car." "I am the patriarch of this family," he roared back, the distortion of the phone speaker crackling in my ear. "And I decide how we support one another. You have a good job. You sit in an office all day clicking a mouse. Lucas is struggling. He's trying to find himself. He needs a break. Giving him this car gives him a leg up. You should be proud to help your brother, not screeching like a banshee." I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead against the cool cabinet door. I could picture him perfectly, sitting in his recliner, feet up, feeling like a benevolent king distributing wealth that wasn't his. He truly believed he was in the right. In his world, I was just an extension of him, and my assets were his to command. "Dad," I said, forcing my voice into a terrifyingly low, calm register. "Does Lucas even have a license? His was suspended 3 years ago for the DUI. "Oh, don't bring up the past," he waved it off verbally. "He's working on getting it back. He's driving carefully. It's fine. The car is safe. It's in his driveway right now. He was so happy, Elena. You should have seen him. He finally felt like a man." "He felt like a man because you gave him my car," I said flatly. "He's your brother," Dad yelled. "You sacrifice for family. That is what women do. Your mother agrees with me completely. She said it was a wonderful gesture." "My mother agrees with whatever keeps you from yelling," I muttered, but he didn't hear me. "Look, I'm done discussing this," he said, the sound of a TV volume increasing in the background. "The car stays with Lucas. You can come over on Sunday for dinner and we'll talk about helping you find a lease on something smaller. Something more appropriate for a single girl. Don't cause a scene, Elena. Don't ruin this for him." The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. He had hung up. He had stolen my car, confessed to it, insulted me, and then hung up as if he had just settled a minor dispute about what to order for pizza. I lowered the phone and looked at the screen. The call had lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. In that time, my entire understanding of my place in this family had been incinerated. I walked into the living room and sank onto the sofa. The shock was beginning to recede, replaced by a cold, vibrating anger. I thought about Lucas. Lucas, who was 31 years old. Lucas, who had borrowed $2,000 from me last year for a business investment that turned out to be online poker debts. Lucas, who was now driving my pristine, leather-interior SUV without a license, probably smoking inside it right now. My father thought the conversation was over. He thought that by invoking the sacred family card, I would fold. He thought I would cry, maybe complain to Mom, and then eventually show up on Sunday driving a rented economy car, accepting my role as the endless provider for the golden child. Hey, T8. Ought he held all the cards because he had the spare key. But as I looked at the black screen of my phone, a notification popped up. It was from the manufacturer's app connected to my car. Vehicle unlocked. Location, 442 Maple Street. I stared at the address, Lucas's rental house. My father had forgotten one crucial thing. He was living in 1980, where possession was 9/10 of the law and the father's word was law. He didn't understand modern ownership. He didn't understand that the title in my safe deposit box didn't have a family clause. And he certainly didn't understand that I wasn't the same little girl who used to give Lucas her allowance to stop him from crying. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I swiped the notification away and opened my contacts. I didn't scroll to Mom. I didn't scroll to Lucas. I scrolled to the non-emergency line for the city police department. To understand why this betrayal cut so deep, you have to understand the dynamic of the House of Gary. Growing up, there were two distinct sets of rules, one for Lucas and one for me. Lucas was the firstborn, the son, the heir apparent to a throne that didn't exist. He was bright, charming, and utterly allergic to consequences. If Lucas failed a math test, it was because the teacher was incompetent. If Lucas broke a window, it was because the glass was cheap. I, on the other hand, was the utility player. I was expected to be perfect, quiet, and helpful. If I got an A, it was expected. If I got a B, I was lazy. My role was to support the infrastructure that allowed Lucas to shine. This dynamic didn't end in childhood. It metastasized into adulthood. While I worked 2 jobs through college to avoid student loans, Lucas drifted through 3 different universities on my parents' dime, majoring in general studies and minoring in fraternity parties. When I graduated and landed an entry-level job in tech, Dad nodded and asked when I was getting married. When Lucas dropped out to become a DJ promoter, Dad bought him a $3,000 turntable setup because you have to invest in talent. For the last 5 years, I had clawed my way up the corporate ladder. I specialized in UX design, user experience. My job was to anticipate problems and fix them before the user even knew they existed. I was good at it. I was meticulous, and I was well compensated. But I lived below my means. I lived in a modest townhouse. I wore simple clothes. My one indulgence, my one solitary symbol of success, was that car. It was a beast of a machine. A top-of-the-line SUV with heated seats, a panoramic sunroof, and an engine that purred like a jungle cat. I bought it because I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to feel powerful. Every time I gripped that leather steering wheel, I felt a surge of pride. I did this, the engine seemed to hum. Nobody gave this to me. And now Lucas had it. Lucas, the antagonist of my life story, though he would never see himself that way. He saw himself as a victim of circumstance, a genius waiting for the world to catch up. Currently, his circumstance was a girl named Jessica he'd met at a dive bar 4 months ago. She was pregnant. I had tried to be happy for them. I really had. I bought them a crib. I set up a savings account for the baby. But Lucas didn't want a crib, he wanted cash. He wanted shortcuts. And Dad was the ultimate enabler. Gary, my father, was a man who believed his masculinity was tied to his ability to control the women in his life. He was charming to strangers, the guy who bought the first round at the bar, but at home, he was a dictator. He had retired from a mid-level management job 5 years ago, and since then, his world had shrunk until his control over his children was the only thing he had left. He resented my success. I saw it in the way he sneered when I talked about a promotion. I saw it in the way he asked, "Who's the boss over there?" implying it couldn't possibly be me. He resented that I didn't need him. Lucas, however, needed him constantly. And Dad loved that. Dad loved being the savior. But since Dad was on a fixed pension and had blown most of his savings on bad investments and bailing Lucas out of previous jams, he couldn't afford to buy Lucas a new car for the baby. So he did the next best thing. He looked at his assets, and in his mind, I was an asset. I sat in my living room, the police dispatcher's voice ringing in my ear. 911, what is your emergency? I had dialed the emergency line after all. My hands were shaking too badly to navigate the automated menu of the non-emergency line, and truthfully, the more I thought about it, the more I realized this was an emergency. A $60,000 theft is a felony. I need to report a stolen vehicle, I said, my voice shockingly steady. It was taken from my driveway within the last 2 hours. Okay, ma'am, the dispatcher said, her tone professional and soothing. Do you have the license plate number? Yes, I said, reciting it from memory. It's a pearl white SUV. I have the VIN as well. And do you have any idea who might have taken it? She asked. This was the moment, the precipice. If I said no, I could play dumb. I could let the police find it, feign ignorance, and maybe spare the family the direct confrontation. But if I told the truth, if I named names, I was declaring war. I was burning the bridge to the ground and salting the earth. I thought about Dad's laugh. I thought about him saying, "You're single," as if my lack of a husband rendered my property communal. I thought about Lucas driving my car without a license, risking the lives of everyone on the road, entitled to the fruits of my labor just because he was born male. Ma'am, the dispatcher prompted, do you have any suspects? I took a deep breath. Yes, I said clearly. I know exactly who took it. My father stole it, and he gave it to my brother. The arrival of a police cruiser in a quiet suburban cul-de-sac is never a subtle event. It's a spectacle. I watched from my living room window as the blue and red lights washed over the perfectly manicured hedges of the neighbors across the street. The lights pulsed rhythmically, a silent siren announcing that the carefully curated facade of my life had officially cracked. I opened the door before the officer could knock. Officer Martinez was a tall man with a calm, weathered face and eyes that had seen enough domestic disputes to know exactly what he was walking into. He didn't look at the empty driveway. He looked at me. He saw the shaking hands I was trying to hide in my pockets and the tear tracks I had hastily wiped away. Ms. Alina Rossi, he asked, his voice a deep baritone that vibrated in the cool evening air. Yes, I said, stepping aside to let him into the foyer. Thank you for coming so quickly. We sat at my dining table. The juxtaposition was jarring. The pristine, modern table where I usually ate my solitary, peaceful dinners, now playing host to a uniform, a gun belt, and a notepad that would record the destruction of my family. The dispatcher said you wanted to report a vehicle stolen by a family member, Martinez said, clicking his pen. He didn't look judgmental, just factual. This is often a civil matter, Ms. Rossi, if there's any shared ownership or if permission was implied. It's not civil, I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. I took a breath and placed a manila folder on the table. I had spent the 20 minutes waiting for him gathering every scrap of documentation I had. This is the title. My name is the only one on it. This is the bill of sale. This is the loan payoff confirmation from the bank, dated 14 days ago. Martinez picked up the documents, scanning them with a practiced eye. And the suspect. My father, Gary Rossi, took the spare key from my safe, or rather, used a spare key I had entrusted to him for emergencies, to remove the vehicle from my property while I was at work. He then delivered it to my brother, Lucas Rossi, who is currently in possession of it. Martinez looked up, raising an eyebrow. You gave your father a key. For emergencies, I stressed, like a fire, or if I was hospitalized, not to gift my property to someone else. And you've revoked this permission. I spoke to him on the phone 30 minutes ago. I told him to return it. He refused. He stated he gave it to my brother. Martinez sighed, a heavy sound that signaled the shift from misunderstanding to crime. Okay, and your brother, does he have a driver's license? No, I said, the word landing heavy between us. It was suspended 3 years ago for a DUI. He has not reinstated it. Martinez stopped writing. He looked at me, his expression hardening. So, we have a stolen vehicle, being operated by an unlicensed driver who has a prior DUI record. Yes. Ms. Rossi, he said, leaning forward, his tone dropping to a serious, cautionary level. I need you to understand what happens next. If I put this out over the radio and we find him, this isn't a warning situation. This is a felony stop. Grand theft auto is a serious charge. Driving on a suspended license is an arrestable offense. Once this train leaves the station, you can't just call us and say, never mind, because your mom calls you crying. The district attorney picks it up. Are you prepared for that? My stomach twisted. I thought about Sunday dinners. I thought about the baby Lucas was expecting. I thought about the look on my mother's face when she realized what I'd done. Then I thought about my father's laugh. You're single, the dismissal, the absolute erasure of my personhood in favor of my brother's comfort. I looked Martinez in the eye. I want my car back, and I want to file the report. They stole from me. Understood, Martinez said. He stood up. Do you have any way to track the vehicle? Yes, I said, pulling out my phone. My hands were steady now. The decision had been made. The manufacturer has an app. It has real-time GPS. I opened the app. The map loaded, a blue dot pulsating on the screen. I expected to see it at Lucas's rental house, parked and stationary as my father had claimed. But the dot wasn't at the house. It was moving. He's not at home, I said, a fresh wave of anger heating my blood. He's on Route 9. He's doing 70 miles an hour. Martinez looked at the screen over my shoulder. That's the highway. Where is he going? I zoomed out. The trajectory was clear. He wasn't going to the pharmacy for the pregnant girlfriend. He wasn't going to the grocery store. He was heading toward the casino district, 40 minutes south. He's joyriding, I whispered, the realization making me feel sick and vindicated all at once. My father said he needed it for the baby. He's going to the casino. Can you track him continuously? Martinez asked, already reaching for his radio. Yes. Okay, grab your coat, Ms. Rossi. We usually don't do this, but if you can update us on his location in real time, it's safer than a high-speed pursuit. I'm going to have you follow in your own vehicle. Oh, wait. I don't have a vehicle, I reminded him. He has it. Right, Martinez said. Okay, you ride with me. We need to ID the vehicle positively before we initiate a stop. The back of a police cruiser is hard plastic and smells faintly of antiseptic and old sweat. I sat in the front passenger seat, a concession Martinez made since I wasn't a suspect, but the cage separating us from the back was a stark reminder of where my brother was likely heading. He's exiting the highway, I said, my eyes glued to the phone screen. Turning onto River Road. There's a gas station and a liquor store there. I know the spot, Martinez said. He didn't turn on the sirens. We were running silent, a predator stalking prey through the suburban gloom. He stopped, I said. He's at the liquor store. Of course he was. The irony was so thick I could taste it. My father had preached about the family needs, about the dignity of a man with a child on the way. And that man was currently using my $60,000 SUV to make a beer run before hitting the slots. Okay, Martinez said, pulling the cruiser into the entrance of the strip mall. Stay in the car, Alina. Do not get out until I tell you. We rounded the corner and there it was, my car. It was parked crookedly across two spaces, the pearl-white paint gleaming under the harsh sodium vapor lights of the parking lot. It looked alien in this setting, a diamond in a gutter. And there was Lucas. He was leaning against the driver's side door, laughing. He was wearing a faded hoodie and jeans, a cigarette dangling from his lips, ash falling onto the pristine paint of my door. He was talking to a guy I didn't recognize, pointing at the rims, gesturing grandly as if he were the king of the world. My father wasn't there. Lucas was alone with his friend. Martinez hit the lights. The sudden burst of red and blue shattered the casual atmosphere of the parking lot. Lucas flinched, dropping his cigarette. He squinted at the cruiser, looking more annoyed than afraid. He clearly thought it was a misunderstanding, or maybe he thought he could charm his way out of it like he did with everything else. Martinez stepped out, hand resting near his holster, his voice booming. Step away from the vehicle. Keep your hands where I can see them. Whoa, whoa, Lucas raised his hands, a smirk still playing on his lips. What's the problem, officer? Just grabbing some supplies. I said step away from the vehicle, Martinez commanded, closing the distance. Turn around and place your hands on the hood. This is my car, Lucas protested, though he complied, his body language oozing arrogant defiance. My dad gave it to me, you can call him. I couldn't stay in the car. I knew Martinez told me to, but the sight of the cigarette ash on my door triggered something primal in me. I opened the door and stepped out into the night air. Lucas turned his head as he heard the second door close. When he saw me, his eyes went wide. Alina, he sputtered. Then his confusion morphed instantly into rage. You called the cops. Are you crazy? You stole my car, Lucas, I said, my voice trembling not with fear but with adrenaline. And you don't have a license. Dad gave it to me, he screamed, struggling as Martinez grabbed his wrist to cuff him. It's a family car, you selfish *TCH. Dad said it was mine. You have the right to remain silent, Martinez intoned, snapping the cuffs shut. The metallic click echoed across the parking lot, a sound of finality that Lucas had clearly never expected to hear. Call Dad, Lucas was yelling now, thrashing as Martinez marched him toward the cruiser. Alina, tell him to stop. You're arresting your own brother. For a car? For a stupid car. It's not just a car, I said, stepping closer. Looking him dead in the eye as Martinez pushed him into the back seat, the hard plastic seat I had avoided. It's my life, and you're not entitled to it. As Martinez shut the door on Lucas's screaming face, my phone rang. It was Dad. He must have been trying to reach Lucas and gotten no answer, or maybe Lucas had managed to text him before the cuffs went on. I answered, putting it on speaker so Martinez, who was walking back to me, could hear. Alina, Dad's voice was a roar. I'm calling Lucas and he's not picking up. I checked the app. Why is the car at a liquor store? I told him to go straight home. Lucas can't come to the phone right now, Dad, I said, watching my brother kick the window of the police car. Why? Are you with him? I'm with the police, I said calmly. Lucas has just been arrested for grand theft auto and driving with a suspended license. The car is being impounded. There was a silence on the other end, so profound it felt like the line had been cut. Then, a sound I had never heard from my father, a sound of pure, unadulterated panic mixed with fury. You did what? He whispered. You arrested your brother, your pregnant brother. I reported my car stolen, I corrected him. You and Lucas did the rest. Fix this, he screamed, his voice shredding. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I gave him permission. If you don't fix this right now, Alina, so help me God, you are no daughter of mine. I will disown you. I will throw you out of the family. I looked at Officer Martinez. He was watching me, waiting to see if I would fold. This was the dynamic my father relied on, the threat of exile, the fear of being an orphan. You can't disown me, Dad, I said, my voice icy and clear. Because I'm the only one with any assets left to own. And as for the car, it's going to the police impound. If you want to bail Lucas out, I suggest you sell your boat, because I'm not paying for it. I hung up. Officer, I said, turning to Martinez, can I please retrieve my spare key from his pocket before you take him away? The adrenaline crash that followed the arrest was brutal. I didn't get my car back that night, because it was evidence in a felony theft, and because the driver was unlicensed, it had to be towed to the impound lot. I had to pay an Uber to take me home to my empty driveway. The silence in my house was different now. It wasn't the silence of peace, it was the silence of a fortress under siege. My phone became a weapon I was afraid to touch. It buzzed incessantly. 17 missed calls from Mom, 12 from Dad, texts from numbers I didn't save but recognized as aunts and cousins. How could you do this to your family? He has a baby coming. Your father is in the hospital with chest pains because of you. Selfish. The chest pains were a classic Gary Rossi move. He used his health like a hostage whenever he lost control of a situation. I knew, logically, that it was a manipulation tactic, but the guilt was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating. I needed to fortify my position. I couldn't just rely on the police report. I knew my family. They would lie to the DA. They would claim I gave verbal permission. They would say I was unstable, jealous, vindictive. I sat down at my computer and opened a new browser window. I needed to know the full extent of what I was dealing with. I started with the court records. They were public domain, but I had never looked. I had always taken my parents' word for it that Lucas's legal troubles were minor misunderstandings or bad luck. I typed in Lucas Rossi. The search results populated instantly. It wasn't just one DUI 3 years ago. There was a possession of controlled substance charge from 2 years ago, dismissed, likely because Dad paid for a lawyer I didn't know about. There were 3 speeding tickets in the last 6 months. Wait. 3 speeding tickets in the last 6 months. Lucas had no license. How was he getting tickets? I clicked on the docket details. The vehicle listed on the tickets wasn't my car. It was a 2018 sedan, registered to Brenda Rossi, my mother. My blood ran cold. My mother, who claimed to be a neutral peacekeeper, had been letting him drive her car for months. They all knew. They knew he was driving illegally. They knew he was a danger to everyone on the road, and they had enabled it. But then I saw something that made my heart stop. A civil judgment filed 4 weeks ago. State Farm Insurance versus Lucas Rossi. It was a subrogation claim. Lucas had been in an accident, an at-fault accident. The details were sparse, but the amount was staggering, $12,000. I pieced it together. Lucas had crashed Mom's car. That's why he didn't have a car. That's why Dad was so desperate to get him wheels. Mom's car wasn't broken. It was likely totaled or hidden to avoid insurance fraud investigations if he was driving it while excluded from the policy. They weren't just borrowing my car. They were using my clean record and my insured vehicle to plug the hole Lucas had blown in their lives. If he had crashed my car, my insurance would have skyrocketed, or worse, denied the claim because of his suspended license, leaving me on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars. They were willing to bankrupt me to keep him mobile. I printed every page. My printer rhythmically spat out the evidence of their negligence. Then my phone rang again. It was a number I didn't recognize, a local landline. I picked up, thinking it might be the impound lot. Hello. Elena, it was my mother. Her voice was small, trembling, but there was a hardness underneath it I rarely heard. Your father is beside himself. He's taking nitroglycerin. If he's having a heart attack, call 911, Mom, I said, my voice flat. Don't call me. How can you be so cold? She wept. Lucas is in a cell. He's terrified. He called us. He said the police are talking about intent to permanently deprive. He could go to prison, Elena. He should have thought about that before he took my car to a liquor store while driving on a suspended license, I said. He was just blowing off steam, the pressure of the baby. Mom, stop, I cut her off. I know about the accident. The silence on the line was instantaneous. The weeping stopped. I saw the court records, I continued, pressing my advantage. I know he totaled your car last month. I know State Farm is suing him. Did you tell Dad to give him my car because you guys couldn't afford to replace yours? She stammered. We were going to pay you back if anything happened. With what money? I asked ruthlessly. Dad's pension? You just told me Dad is sick. You can't afford a $12,000 judgment, let alone a $60,000 SUV. You have so much, she hissed, the mask finally slipping completely. You have that big job, that big house. You have no husband, no children. What do you need all that money for? Your brother is building a legacy. You're just existing. The words hit me like a physical slap. Just existing. To them, my life, my hard work, my career, my independence was nothing more than a waiting room for a husband who might never come. Until then, I was just a resource silo to be raided for the real family members. I'm not just existing, Mom, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it felt like clarity. I'm the only one in this family who is actually living in reality, and reality is about to hit you all very hard. Drop the charges, she demanded. If you don't drop them by tomorrow morning, don't bother coming to Christmas. Don't bother coming to anything. You'll be dead to us. I can't drop the charges, Mom, I said. The district attorney picks them up. It's out of my hands, but honestly, even if I could, I wouldn't. I hung up before she could reply. I sat in the dark, the stack of court documents in front of me. I had the leverage. I had the truth, but I knew this wasn't over. They would try to ambush me. They would try to force me to recant my statement to the police. I needed to do one more thing. I needed to make sure that when the sun rose, there was absolutely nowhere for them to hide. I picked up my phone and dialed Officer Martinez's direct line on the card he gave me. Officer Martinez, he answered. It's Alina, I said. I found something. It's about why my brother needed the car. And it proves my father knew exactly how dangerous it was to give it to him. I have evidence of a prior undisclosed accident and insurance fraud involving my mother's vehicle. Bring it in tomorrow morning, Martinez said, his tone shifting from dutiful to grim. This just went from a joyride to a conspiracy. The summons came the next morning, not from a court clerk, but from my Aunt Linda. Your mother is distraught, she texted. Family meeting. 6:00 p.m. Dad's house. Be there or don't bother calling yourself a Rossi. It was a trap. I knew it was a trap. They were gathering the tribunal, the extended family of aunts, uncles, and cousins who had spent decades drinking the Kool-Aid of my father's benevolent patriarch act. They wanted to stage an intervention. They wanted to surround me, shame me, and bully me into dropping the charges before the arraignment on Monday. I spent the afternoon preparing. I didn't go to work. I took a personal day to finalize my case. I went to the bank. I stopped by the precinct to get a copy of the preliminary incident report from Officer Martinez. And finally, I stopped at a copy shop and made 5 bound dossiers. When I pulled up to my parents' house, in a rental car, a nondescript gray sedan that felt miserably small, the driveway was full. Aunt Linda's minivan was there, Uncle Mike's truck, and surprisingly, a beat-up Honda Civic I didn't recognize. I walked to the front door, clutching my bag. I didn't knock. I used my key, the one I should have taken back years ago, and stepped into the lion's den. The living room was crowded. My father sat in his recliner like a deposed king, clutching a handkerchief. My mother was on the sofa, flanked by Aunt Linda and my cousin Sarah, looking as if she were at a wake. Uncle Mike was leaning against the fireplace, arms crossed, looking stern. And in the corner, looking small and terrified, was Jessica, Lucas's pregnant girlfriend. The room went silent when I entered. You have some nerve, Aunt Linda spat, breaking the silence. "Walking in here after you put your brother in a cage." "I didn't put him there," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "He drove himself there, in my stolen car." "It was a misunderstanding," Dad shouted, sitting up. His face was blotchy, his eyes wild. "I told you, I authorized it. You are humiliating this family over a piece of metal." "Sit down, Dad," I said, walking to the center of the room. I didn't sit. I wanted the height advantage. "We're going to have a talk, a real one, no more secrets, no more golden child mythology." "We are here to talk about you dropping the charges," Uncle Mike rumbled. "You're going to call the DA, you're going to say you forgot you lent him the car, and you're going to bail him out." "No," I said, "I'm not." "Then get out," Mom screamed, leaping up. "Get out of my house. You are selfish. You are jealous because Lucas is building a family and you have nothing." "I have the truth," I said, unzipping my bag, "and I think Jessica needs to hear it." Jessica looked up, her eyes wide and red-rimmed. "Me." "Don't listen to her, honey," Mom said quickly, moving to block Jessica's view. "Elena is unstable. She's having a breakdown." "I'm not the one being sued for $12,000, Mom," I said loudly, dropping the first dossier onto the coffee table with a heavy thud. The room froze. "What is that?" Uncle Mike asked, stepping forward. "That," I said, pointing to the documents, "is the lawsuit filed by State Farm Insurance against Lucas Rossi for the accident he caused 4 weeks ago, the accident that totaled Mom's car." I looked at Jessica. "Did they tell you why Lucas doesn't have a car, Jessica? Did they tell you it was because he smashed the last one while driving on a suspended license? Or did they tell you it was in the shop?" Jessica stood up slowly, pushing past my mother. He said the transmission blew." "He lied," I said. I pulled out the second document. "And here is his driving record. 3 speeding tickets in the last 6 months, all in Mom's car, while you were in the passenger seat probably." My father stood up, his face purple. "That is private family business. You have no right." "You made it my business when you stole my car to cover up your financial mess," I yelled back, finally matching his volume. "You want to talk about family? Let's talk about family. You want me to support Lucas? You want me to be the safety net? Well, look at the net, Dad. It's full of holes." I turned to the extended family. Aunt Linda looked confused. Uncle Mike was frowning, picking up the papers. "They are broke," I announced, dropping the bombshell I had discovered that morning. "Dad cashed out his IRA 6 months ago, not to invest, to pay Lucas's gambling debts." "Liar," Dad shrieked, but his voice cracked. "Here are the bank statements," I said, tossing another stack on the table. "You left them in the study, Dad. I made copies. You have less than $5,000 to your name. You can't afford to help Lucas. You can't afford the baby. That's why you took my car. You were going to let Lucas drive it, and when he inevitably crashed it or got it impounded, you were going to guilt me into eating the cost because family helps family." The silence now was heavy, suffocating. Uncle Mike was reading the bank statements, his face paling. He looked at my father. "Gary, is this true? You borrowed $4,000 from me last month for home repairs. Did that go to Lucas?" Dad didn't answer. He slumped back into his chair, looking suddenly very old and very small. I turned to Jessica. She was trembling, holding her stomach. "Jessica," I said, my voice softening, "they are using you. They are using the baby. They see that child as a leverage point to get money from me, from Mike, from anyone they can guilt trip. Lucas went to the casino last night. He wasn't getting supplies. He was taking my car to the casino with money he probably stole from your purse." Jessica let out a choked sob. He took my rent money. He said he needed it for the lawyer to fix his license." "There is no lawyer," I said gently, "and there is no license." "That's enough," Mom shrieked, lunging at me. Uncle Mike caught her by the arm, holding her back. "It is enough, Brenda," Uncle Mike said, his voice low and dangerous. "It's enough." Jessica looked at my parents. She looked at the dossier on the table, then she looked at me. "Is he really in jail?" she whispered. Yes, I said. For grand theft auto, and I'm not bailing him out. If I do, he learns nothing. If I do, he keeps driving. And next time, he might kill someone, maybe even you or the baby. Jessica took a deep breath. She wiped her face. The fear in her eyes was replaced by a cold realization. The spell was broken. I need a ride, she said to the room. I need to go to my sister S in Ohio. You can't leave, Mom wailed. You're carrying my grandson. I'm carrying my child, Jessica snapped, her voice surprisingly strong. And I'm not raising him around liars and thieves. She looked at me. Can you take me to the bus station? I'll do better, I said, picking up my bag. I'll drive you to Ohio, but we leave right now. I turned to my father one last time. He wouldn't look at me. He was staring at the floor, the illusion of his power shattered by the weight of paper and truth. I'm filing a restraining order tomorrow, I said to him. Against you, Mom, and Lucas. Do not come to my house. Do not call me. If you do, I will have you arrested for harassment. You wanted my assets, you just lost your biggest one. I walked out the door, Jessica following close behind me. As we stepped into the cool evening air, I heard the explosion of arguments erupting inside the house. Uncle Mike shouting about his money, Aunt Linda demanding answers. It sounded like music. The drive to Ohio was long, quiet, and necessary. We didn't talk much for the first hour. Jessica cried silently in the passenger seat of the rental car, mourning the life she thought she was building. I let her cry. I knew that grief. I was mourning too, not for a boyfriend, but for the parents I wished I had, rather than the ones I was stuck with. Somewhere around the state line, she spoke. Thank you, she said, her voice hoarse. For telling me, I knew something was wrong, but I wanted to believe him. We all did, I said. It's designed that way. The system only works if we all play our parts. I just stopped playing mine. I dropped her off at her sister's house at 2:00 a.m. Her sister, a fierce-looking woman in pajamas, hugged me on the porch. You saved her life, she whispered, if he had been driving her around. Take care of the baby, I said. And make sure Lucas's name isn't on the birth certificate until he proves he's a father, not a dependent. I drove back alone. The exhaustion was deep, settling into my bones, but my mind was crystal clear. The next few weeks were a blur of legal bureaucracy, but for the first time in my life, I navigated it without fear. Officer Martinez was true to his word. The evidence of the insurance fraud, hiding the totaled vehicle while claiming it was a mechanical failure, and potentially collecting a payout they hadn't used to replace the car, triggered an investigation. My parents were facing potential charges of their own, or at the very least, a financial clawback that would leave them destitute. Lucas didn't get bail. With the prior DUI, the suspended license, and the sheer value of the stolen vehicle, the judge set the bond at $50,000. My parents couldn't pay it. I certainly didn't. He sat in county jail for 3 months awaiting trial. Eventually, he took a plea deal, 2 years of probation, mandatory rehab, and restitution. But the restitution was a joke. He had no money. The real justice came from the silence. I followed through on the restraining order. The judge granted it easily after hearing the threats my father had made on the voicemail I saved. The legal piece of paper was a thin shield, but it was symbolic. It was the line in the sand. I got my car back 10 days after the incident. I went to the impound lot to retrieve it. It was dusty, and the interior smelled faintly of stale beer and Lucas's cheap cigarettes. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel. I thought I would feel dirty. I thought I would want to sell it to purge the memory. But as I started the engine and felt that familiar, powerful purr, I realized something. This car wasn't tainted. It was a survivor like me. I took it to a professional detailer. I had them scrub every inch of it. I had them shampoo the carpets and condition the leather until it smelled like new money and freedom. When I drove it home, I parked it in the driveway. I stood there for a long time looking at it. My phone didn't ring. My parents were too busy fighting with each other, with the bank, and with the insurance investigators to harass me. Uncle Mike had cut them off. The extended family, finally seeing the financial parasitism for what it was, had retreated. I was alone. But for the first time in 29 years, alone didn't feel like a punishment. It didn't feel like I was the leftover piece of the family puzzle. I walked into my quiet, clean house. I opened a bottle of wine, one I had been saving for a special occasion. I poured a glass and sat on my patio, looking out at the silhouette of my car against the streetlights. I had lost a brother. I had lost my parents. I had lost the illusion of a safety net. But I had kept my dignity. I had protected my future. And most importantly, I had finally learned the most expensive lesson of my life. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm, especially when they are the ones holding the matches. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like victory,